Florida is proof positive that we, the people, are not destined for failure.
DeSantis wins. He has made a promise, and he's making good on the promise.
Florida is leading the nation. Decline is a choice. Success is attainable. And freedom is worth fighting for.
I want to talk about freedom of speech and the bizarreness of the right wing claiming that we are the ones that want to take away your speech.
Speaking of big dumb a-holes, there's news about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Seen here getting kicked in the Florida Keys.
No matter who the so-called conservatives are, it's always the same thing. Everybody else can say what they want, as long as it's pro-conservative, as long as it's anti-immigration, as long as it's anti-woke.
The New York Post proclaimed him the future, which is, depressing.
I'll tell you what he's got. I don't know if you heard of this, but he's got BDE. Anybody know what that means? Ask your kids about it later. I call it Big DeSantis energy.
And he's on book tour now, so you know he's running for president. And what a piece of shit it is.
Pump up the Ron-citement. Today he released a memoir, The Courage to Be Free, a title so politically generic that I have already forgotten it. What was it again? Oh, right. The Bravery to Be Flagged.
This guy is not just an asshole, which he is, but he's extremely weird, to the point of being bizarre. Do we really want another one of those?
According to the Times, Trump has spent weeks trying to goad DeSantis into a fight, describing him in conversations as Meatball Ron.
And I hate to say it, but Trump still got it. It's perfectly stupid, childish, and hurtful in a way that's genuinely difficult to articulate. Also,
He is a canned version of MAGA. It's like they took MAGA, put it in gelatin form, put it in a suit, and ran him for governor. And he's exactly who they want.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your governor speaking.
Today's training evolution, dogfighting, taking on the corporate media.
Number one, don't fire unless fired upon. But when they fire, you fire back with overwhelming force.
Does it say that in the bill? I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill.
Number two, never ever back down from a fight.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or ask a question?
And what he wants to do is more Nazi shit. Banning books? What the hell are you talking about? And they want to pretend like it's textbooks, but it's not. They've banned 4,000 books in Florida schools. 4,000.
Ron DeSantis' main goal, make America Florida. No. No. We already have one, okay? But sure, make the United States more like Florida. 41st in literacy, 4th in total STD cases, and number 1 in unplanned jet ski pregnancies.
take that clip where he said, are you going to give a speech or ask a question? If you look at the start of that exchange, you'll notice that only one person is doing the fighting there.
Governor, what has gone wrong with the rollout of the vaccine that we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashed?
There's a lot of demand. I mean, I think at the end of the day, excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
You just said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or you're going to ask a question?
With all due respect, Governor,
you asked the question, I'm going to answer it.
I'm trying to finish my question.
No, you're giving a speech. You asked the question.
I am trying to ask you the...
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3? They only got 1 question. Why do you get 3?
With all due respect, Governor, I'm just asking if I could finish my question.
You didn't. You finished the question.
This guy is dangerous. Just like every other so-called conservative that's running today.
DeSantis doesn't hate all media. Because there is one notable exception, and it's the exact one that you are thinking of. DeSantis is on Fox News all the time. Morning, noon, and night. Even by Republican standards, the mutual affection between him and Fox is pretty extreme. In just one 4-month stretch, the network asked him to appear on its airwaves 113 times, or nearly once a day, with one Fox producer even offering to let him pick the subject matter if he agreed to come on, which is just pathetic.
You have to run an empty suit, because anything else will be destroyed. Republicans are scum, and it's easy to prove. This guy? Come on.
In his book, which again is titled The Freedom to Be Hamburger, DeSantis writes about how his parents came from gritty, working-class, God-fearing towns in Ohio and Pennsylvania, which he claims gives him Rust Belt values. You grew up in Florida. This guy is so thirsty for approval from the heartland. My parents were from the Rust Belt. My uncle married a steel beam. My cousins are corn.
He sells himself as someone with a proven track record, and he has done some terrible stuff. For instance, at his urging, his state's medical board banned gender-affirming care for minors, and he signed a 15-week abortion ban into law, while recently suggesting he'd sign a 6-week one if it reached his desk.
But DeSantis is proud of his book, The Big Tree I Saw.
If this is the best the Republicans can do, we're gonna win. But not before they do a hell of a lot of damage to this country.
But look, lots of Republican governors have done things like that. What makes DeSantis extra popular on the right is his willingness to wage big, symbolic culture wars. He's bragged that he's made Florida the freest state in America while defending its residents from the greatest scourge of our time.
In a world that has increasingly gone mad, Florida is a beachhead of sanity. Florida is a citadel of freedom in a world gone mad. And Florida is a redoubt of sanity where woke ideology goes to die.
Wokeism is really a form of cultural Marxism. The wokeism is the new religion of the left. We are not and will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
I want to fact check you there, Governor. Florida is a madhouse of doubtful sanity where everyone goes to die.
But somehow, they will be able to convince an astonishing number of people that this is the way. It is dangerous, and we are on the primrose path to fascism.
DeSantis says woke so often it begins to lose all meaning. But if you wonder what he thinks it actually stands for, his general counsel once helpfully defined woke in court as the view that there are systemic injustices in American society and the need to have policies that address them. Which is a hell of a thing for someone to admit to everyone that you are against.
I actually wrote it. I think it comes across as more authentic because it is me writing this.
That's right. Every word is pure, uncut DeSantis. When you read the Commitment to Eat Crayons, you realize that it's all straight from his brain, or as the New York Times described it, a culture war Mad Libs that can't distract from the dull coldness at its core and courageously free of anything that resembles charisma or a discernible sense of humor.
People call it a war on woke.
That's not fair. If he didn't have a sense of humor, why would he title his book, How Do They Fold the Pretzels?
Take DeSantis' so-called anti-riot law, which he passed following the Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020. That law, among other things, strengthens criminal penalties for those deemed rioters at demonstrations. And he loves to brag to conservative audiences about just how mad it's made people.
And I have to say, brag a little bit, our anti-riot legislation was recently criticized by the United Nations. So I wear that as a badge of honor.
But it's not. It's a war on you.
A judge issued a preliminary injunction blocking the key part of it from being enforced, arguing that it could effectively criminalize legal protected speech and that it was vague to the point of unconstitutionality. Now, the same thing happened to his Stop Social Media Censorship Act, which again got a huge amount of attention when he first signed it. It threatened social media platforms with fines for banning political candidates, and he proposed it shortly after a number of them had removed Trump in the wake of January 6th because of, you know, that thing. But that law is also under a preliminary injunction from a judge who at one point told the DeSantis administration's lawyers, I won't put you on the spot and ask if you've ever dealt with a statute that was more poorly drafted.
there's a new sheriff in town, and accountability will be the order of the day.
Yes, the kind of accountability that's at the core of his book, I Puked in the Teacups.
He's also passed an act called the Stop Woke Act, which limits the ways concepts related to systemic racism and sex discrimination can be discussed in schools.
It's a war on regular people who aren't allowed to say anything that's not been pre-approved by the state.
Images of empty shelves are very real and are the direct result of DeSantis' actions, because he signed legislation mandating that only approved books could be included in any school or classroom library, and that approval must come from a certified media specialist. That led some districts, including the ones those photos are from, to tell teachers to remove or cover books, not because they were pushing a false narrative, but because they were trying to comply with DeSantis' stupid law. And while DeSantis might say, well, this isn't overreaction because those books will return once they are approved, not all of them. Because thanks to his new law, as well as that Don't Say Gay bill and his Stop Woke Act, he has turbocharged the movement among conservatives.
A rioter nicknamed Sedition Panda because he wore a giant panda head while breaching the Capitol building. Let's check him out. There you go. Looking like a roadie for the band at Chuck E. Cheese. Yesterday, Sedition Panda was arrested in, no surprise, Florida. There you go.
What DeSantis has done is make it so anyone in a community can challenge these books. Reporters tracked down one woman who submitted 21 book challenges in one county, only to find that she's a retiree with no children who fully admits that she hasn't read all of them, but I've read them in partial. So basically, she just skimmed them and said, I'm pretty sure nobody should read this, which is coincidentally exactly how I feel about Ron DeSantis' new book, but I'm not trying to get it taken out of libraries, am I?
That's the law in Florida. Do we want that to be the law in the nation?
Attempts to criminalise protests, and you combine it with everything else, from the support for restrictive abortion bans to the efforts to stop gender-affirming care, it really begins to feel like the freest state in America is only free to the extent that anyone wants to behave exactly the way that Ron DeSantis thinks they should.
I'm Zachariah, Lone Star Liberal. Vote these fuckers out.
When Ron DeSantis says, make America Florida, this is what he's talking about. That's why he called his book, A Panda with a Planda.